Why can't I move the camera around? Ah! Suck my dick. Welcome to a really retro review of Dynasty Warriors 4. Dynasty Warriors 4 is a game that follows the rich history of China following the Han Dynasty in a time unofficially known as the Three Kingdoms. Political drama was huge at the time, and the only way to convey that logically in a game is by doing this. I am God! One man army! Kill everyone! Gameplay aside, the story does represent some historical accuracy on what it's based on, including characters and locations. The way some of the battles go down is questionable, but to include more gameplay, Koei have allowed you as the user to play out battles from a different perspective with different outcomes. You have three main camps you can choose to be a part of. Excuse my pronunciation on pretty much everything in this game, by the way. My Chinese is a bit... well, it isn't. I don't know any Chinese. Leave me alone. What was I saying? Oh yeah. You have three kingdoms you can choose to be a part of, each of which will allow you to play through the story from their own perspectives, controlling the potential outcome of each battle. You have other camps you can be a part of following the completion of at least one playthrough. This includes options such as joining the mighty Lu Bu in his rebellion. It's hard to judge a story so heavily based on a particular period of history, but let's do that anyway. The theme itself is actually very interesting. War and politics is always difficult to convey in gaming without taking away the fun of the gameplay itself, so I commend Koei for attempting this, and yes, I say attempt because they failed. Whether what happens as part of the story is factual or not, it's told so terribly that it doesn't actually matter whether it's true or not. They could have completely made up what's happening and my experience with the story wouldn't have changed. The cutscenes explain very little. Most of the context you get are from text excerpts that you read before each battle, and everything else is given to you via terrible voice acting during battle. Seriously. The voice acting is shockingly bad. Keep in mind that this game has a huge variety of entirely voiced characters. I'd say about half a dozen have what I'd consider to be acceptable voice acting. And this is for 2003, by the way. Like, it's acceptable for 2003, not 2019. And don't even get me started on the custom-made officer's voice.
I accept your challenge!
I get your thing! Oh, it's so bad. Anyway, hop on board my segue, guys. It's time to swiftly move on to the next section. The gameplay! I seriously had to fight my nostalgia here. I honestly loved this game when I was younger, but looking at it from an unbiased perspective, I have to admit, this is probably one of the most repetitive games I've ever played. Not to say that I found my experience of it boring, but when in the actual thick of the gameplay, you really are just doing a lot of the same thing in different scenarios on different battlefields. Thankfully, this game has a few saving graces, and if you're happy to constantly mash up huge armies of enemies, then what the game has to offer outside of that isn't something to frown at. It isn't something to get particularly ecstatic about either. The developers have included a huge variety of different ways to experience the game over and over again, which you'd think takes a little bit of the tedious side out of the game. It does actually a bit, and I say a bit. You have the potential to unlock a magnitude of different characters, many of whom have their own personalised weapons that you can level up and equip to your own custom character, essentially copy and pasting the moveset. These movesets are executed by mashing a combination of square and triangle, assuming you're playing on PlayStation. Did this game actually come out on other consoles? I think maybe Xbox? I'm not sure. So yeah, these movesets are executed by mashing a combination of square and triangle, and that's pretty much it for the technicalities of combat. It isn't particularly pretty or smooth. It's designed for the player to mow through piles of enemies, and even though Koei have gone through it quite roughly, they've achieved what they wanted to in that sense, and it can be quite satisfying at times. As well as this, you can collect items from defeating enemy officers during battle, which can be equipped in preparation for your upcoming battle. The developers added a lot of different ideas into the game. The issue is that none of them particularly go in depth, and it seems like a matter of quantity over quality here. Let's shove in as many mechanics as possible into the game to force replayability onto the player. Something segue. The graphics! Bad. Well, yeah, bad. I feel harsh saying that, given that Koei are one of the very few developers producing games like this. You could have up to hundreds of NPCs on the screen at any given time, and that takes its toll on a console like the PlayStation 2. Or the equivalent of whatever you might have been playing it on. So it's no surprise that the quality of the graphics took a hit, and for that reason I feel like I should give Dynasty Warriors 4 a break in that aspect, but what I say and what I do are very different things. The graphics are garbage, NPCs are rarely unique, literally smashing through thousands of John Does, textures are blurry in areas and lack detail, and the battlefield often includes vast areas of unpopulated nothingness that appears out of the fog. Unpopulated nothingness. Nothingness. Is nothingness a word? Huh, turns out it is. So yeah, nothing better sums up the graphics than nothingness. They aren't particularly offensive to the eye, and like I mentioned, they get a bit of a layoff due to the high amount of NPCs in any given scene, but generally they don't really compete with other games made in the same period. Oh, and the victory animation is one of the most bland and unexciting things I've ever seen. Well done, you just slaughtered countless amounts of people. Yay! Ugh. So the summary. The story! 3 out of 10. I like the idea it's based on, but it was just executed terribly. This worked much better with the old Romance of the Three Kingdoms games. The gameplay! 4 out of 10. It does have some entertainment value, and Koei have tried to include extra mechanics to spice things up, but ultimately it has a very limited amount of fun and it becomes a bit tedious. The graphics! 3 out of 10. Not offensive to the eye, but either too much or too little going on and really doesn't compete with other games of its time. The Dynasty effect! 6 out of 10. I really like the idea and the setting of the game, and I'd love to see it tackled with an entirely new approach. And overall it's a 4 out of 10. Hasn't aged well, more fun with a friend, but overall a below average gaming experience. Thanks for watching this retro review. I have new videos coming soon. To keep up to date with them, make sure you subscribe, and you can follow me on Twitter, which, I mean, just social media and stuff. Yeah. Thanks.